coaching an athletic team is not that much different from being, in any of the C-suite or middle management positions, because coaching is about people, and so is being a leader, right? It's about people. When I first started coaching, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm coaching basketball. And so I went and learned all these offenses and all these defenses, and I read all these books. And I started coaching, and I was like, it's not about the basketball.
Right.
It's about the people.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. Charlie is one of America's foremost authorities on respect and leadership development. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to another episode of the Power of Respect podcast. I'm Charlie Leichtweis. To me, it's important that we find ways to communicate better and more effectively with each other. We can accomplish so much more if we can do that. To me, leadership is an equal emphasis on results and relationships. And while technology has improved our ability to determine and measure results, we have not made the same strides with relationships. Respect is the key word for me to help me focus on relationships, even when I don't share the same views of the people I'm with or talking to. That is why I created the Power of Respect podcast. We have a great guest today, someone who has competed and coached at the highest levels in her sport. Her name is Sherry Winn. She's a two-time Olympian, former National Collegiate Coach of the Year, best-selling author, and CEO of the Winning Leadership Company. Welcome, Sherry. It's great to be with you.
Thanks, Charlie. It's wonderful to be part of this today.
So, we're talking about the power of respect, and certainly in your experience of coaching and competing, respect is a key element. Can you maybe share some of your thoughts on the concept of respect and how it worked within your career?
Wow, there's so many things, so many levels I could dive into with that, Charlie. Let's just talk about respect. First, I think that the first respect you have to have is internal respect. And that means really coming from a place of loving yourself, giving yourself the permission to be authentic. When you respect yourself, it's going to show up in your values, show up in your honesty, your transparency, your integrity. So I think the first thing is self-respect, because you have self-respect, then you're going to respect everybody else. You're going to respect your team. You're going to respect your leaders. You're going to respect, every other level that comes. If you don't have that, it'll come out in the way that you treat other people.
Right. No, absolutely true. And the awareness to know what that means is important, to know what respect looks like. And when you've come across somebody, maybe a player that you thought was doubting themselves, how did you help them in that regard?
Well, that's going to show up in a lot of different ways. When people don't have self-respect, it shows up in things like drinking too much, not going to sleep when you need it, not doing your work. In today's society, it could be so many different ways, cutting, overuse of drugs. And when we don't respect ourselves, it's going to come out somehow. We lie to other people. We, take things that aren't ours, then we rationalize it. So, when I was a basketball coach, what was important was that the people that my players understood the power of respecting themselves. Because the more they respected themselves, the better player they were going to become. If you don't respect yourself, you're always going to be taking something from yourself. So, for example, if you were staying up late at night and you're drinking, then the next day you're not going to show up well on the court, which is also true for anywhere, right? If you're not respecting yourself, it's going to show up in the work that you do. It's going to show up in the leadership that you do. So when I was a coach, obviously we're going to talk a lot about, I would call it self-love. Other people may not like that word, but to me, it's about, if you don't love yourself, it's going to show up in all kinds of different ways that you create self-sabotage.
It's interesting. I had a podcast session with a gentleman who played on the U.S. men's national team as a backup goalie, played at goalie in college at the highest level with lots of awards for that. And we were talking about the idea of when the star on the team and how do they show respect for others. And one of the things he mentioned was they show respect by themselves working as hard as they can. Things like that. I'm sure you've seen some of that in the samples of your career.
Right.
and how does that play to you?
Well, when I had leaders on the team, I always wanted them to, I said, if you're going to be a leader, then you have to work harder than anybody else. You can't just be better than anybody else. You have to work harder than anybody else, even if you're better than everybody else. I had a teammate when I was playing the national team, phenomenal player. This woman was so incredible, but she didn't work hard. And she often had excuses or, oh, I don't feel well today, or, oh man, my grandmom's sick, or, oh, blah, 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 blah. I mean, one time you have a little bit of compassion. Second time you got a little compassion. By the time that there's fifth, sixth, and seventh, you're like, I don't have any compassion for you. I don't care about you. And what would happen was she'd come back and still be great. But who wanted to play with her? Who cared about how great she was if she wasn't willing to give to the team by her presence on the court? The same thing with my players. Like, your ability to give is going to be equally to your ability to receive, right? And so if you're not willing to give, you're not going to get from your team, and that counts in any kind of level of leadership that you look at.
Yeah, and then the other issues when you think about the stars and how they react to those who may be less than a star when they make a mistake, in a competition. And he was talking about the concept of the people who are at the top of the level in their sport showing respect for the effort and the work ethic that those other people put in. It's not about somebody made a mistake that makes them bad, because we all make mistakes. But the idea that the people who were seen as leaders on the team would also show respect for the effort and the work ethic that those people put in, even if they happen to have made a mistake. And I think that's important, even in business today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are so many correlations between athletics and business. There's really not a lot of difference in terms of, if you're a coach, you're working with people, you're with a team to play together, who learns to collaborate, who learns to play their roles, who learns to give and take. Same thing in business. It's about your people and how you're able to make those people, enable those people to work together. So that comes down to collaboration, which comes down to respect, which comes down to how do you treat other people. So, we spent a lot of time in leadership when I started coaching, because here's the thing. Charlie, when I first started coaching, I tell my assistant coaches, I need a leader. I want you to go find me a great leader. Well, I'm talking about 18-year-old young women. What do they know about leadership? Right. And so finally it dawned on me at some point, right? I probably read something or listened to somebody, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is ridiculous to think that somebody could come in and be a leader who has no experience other than playing on a high school team, that they would know what it looks like and how to cultivate that on the court. And so we started doing leadership training for our players. So we would take our top 3 players, not necessarily our top 3 players, our top 3 people who could be great leaders, and would train them in leadership. And so those very things you were talking about, Charlie, about, how do you treat somebody who makes them, misses a pass, who fails on their defensive assignment? How do you have that discussion with that person so that you're going to get them to do the things that they need to do on the team? And that's a part of respect, right? Because if you just tell them, get in their face, I mean, I don't know about men may behave differently, but I can tell you this: if you get a woman's face and you tell them that they're crap and they can't do anything, and you show disrespect to them, they're not going to come and play better. They're going to be worse.
That's true of men as well in most cases. Yeah. I mean, fear is not a motivator, and it's certainly not sustainable anyway.
Well, I say it's not. I'd say it's not a motivator. I say it is a motivator to a small extent. When people have a fear, right? They're going to fear they lose their position or fear their job. But here's the deal. So you said it wasn't sustainable, and that's the part I agree in, right? It's going to be short-lived, and after that moment, or after that, whatever that time that fear is used, then how are you going to get that person to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? How are you going to get them to repeatedly improve their performance? It's not going to come from fear. It's going to come from somewhere else.
And you talked about the leadership development that you would put in place to help these folks in terms of being better leaders. The investment in people is also a sign of respect in the idea of development. So I think that's a very important, again, a lesson not only in sport, but certainly in business. Time and again, it looks to me like people are saying, well, I want somebody to be a leader, but yet they don't make the investment in that person to help them be the best they can be.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where you see people fail, is when, let's say they're a great salesperson. And because they're a great salesperson, then you make the assumption that they can be a great leader. There's a lot of differences in between being a great salesperson and being a great leader. So if you invest the time and energy and effort into that person, if you train them in what makes a great leader, they're going to have a higher chance of success. Whereas if you just go, well, because you're great at this, you're going to be great at that. There's no, I mean, you can't do that. There's no comparison. And yet, many companies do this, and that's why their leaders fail. If you want them to be a good leader, you invest in that leadership, and not just that one time. It's a continual investment. There are companies who will have, coaches like me on staff so that they can make sure that their leaders, even at the highest levels, continue to grow and they never stop their learning. Well, that's respect. That means the company respects their leaders, and that means the leaders are going to respect, their next level of leadership, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, it comes back to me in terms of awareness of how things affect yourself first. You talked about self-respect, absolutely. And therefore, how things will affect others when you are affected first. So I know it sounds kind of twisted, but the fact is, when I think about it, I like to think about in terms of when you start seeing something you don't like or hearing something you don't like, what do you do to make sure you can understand that better? If you get angry, if you get frustrated with it, the chances of you finding out how to do things better is slim and none. And it doesn't help anybody else. If you can pause before you go up to what I call that emotional scale, I think that that'll put you in a position to better understand. Doesn't mean you always agree with the other person, but it puts you in a position to understand enough to get to the common ground. Do you find that in sports as well?
Well, I mean, that's part of, the emotional intelligence, is the ability to manage your emotions. So we know that the people that are highest in emotional intelligence, there's three things. Well, A, they're going to be happier. Second thing is they're a better leader. And third thing is they're going to be higher in job performance. So part of that emotional intelligence is the ability to have self-awareness, which very few people have, by the way. It's only 15%, 15% of the population is self-aware. That means 85% of the people don't know what they don't know and don't care what they don't know. They're not looking for it. But the second thing about emotional intelligence is the ability to manage your emotions, which then you cannot manage your emotions if you don't have that self-awareness of what those emotions look like, how they play out in other people, and what triggers those emotions in you. So if you can't, you mentioned pause, you said, the ability to pause before you say anything and to kind of tamp down the first words that come to your thought. Those first words that we have, they're coming up.
Right.
We're not going to say those. We have that chance. Well, that does come from self-respect. That comes from, it's respecting yourself to the level that you don't want to show up in a way that's going to harm people, and you don't want to show up in a way that's going to harm yourself. And also self-respecting for the people that you're talking to. And all that comes down to is, again, like you said, pause. I like to say the word, I like to use the term Q-tip, which is quit taking it personal. Because when somebody is speaking to you, it's never about you. It's about their own lifetime of experiences. And they don't know what they don't know. So if they're saying something that's a little off, they're saying something that's a little demeaning, then if we understand it's not about us, we have the ability, Charlie, to pause.
Yeah, that's so important and not easy to do. And I think this conversation in and of itself is not expecting people to be perfect in that regard. But if we could imagine if people could be, pick a number, 5% better at it, how much better the communication process will be, and therefore how much better the collaboration process will be between people. In fact, I think, the communication is one of the backbones of this whole process we're talking about. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of different communication styles in your lifetime. Perhaps you could comment on some of them as examples of how to do it. Hopefully, maybe how not to do it in other cases. The names will be changed to protect the innocent. I get that.
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's two ways to learn. You can always learn from your positive mentors, and you can also learn from the people who are negative mentors. If you're tuned into learning, and if you're tuned into growth, then you're going to find that positivity out of either source. When I was going through the Olympics, I had, let's see, several different nationalities coaching us. So this is in the 1980s. I had a Spaniard, I had a Hungarian, a Czechoslovakian, a Bulgarian, a Russian. So when I say that, I don't mean that in negatively. I just mean that their culture was a lot different than ours. And so their way of motivating was to yell, scream, and bring us down. And what I discovered was it wasn't helpful for me. Like, you're telling me I'm stupid. That's not helpful for me. You didn't give me direction on how to get better. You didn't show me, like, you didn't say to me, this is what I need you to do. This is how, if you do it, you'll be successful. And so when I got that derogatory language, I just fought back because I didn't have any better tools at the time. I just fought back, and I'd yell, well, I was going to say curse, which is exactly what I did. I'd curse back at them. Right. And then I'd get in trouble, even though they were cursing at me first. I'd get in trouble and then suspended or whatever, taken off the court for sure. And I learned from that. I was like, man, that's not helpful. You didn't tell me what to do better. You just told me I wasn't doing something, and then you yelled and screamed at me, hoping somehow that through this derogatory language that I was going to achieve something that you're not even telling me what it is. And so I learned that those kind of that kind of coaching, that kind of leading was not positive. So I made real intent when I became a coach, real intent to discuss what people needed to do better, like focus on the constructive feedback on what they needed to do better so that they could excel and so that we as a team could win. And when I focused on that, and also the why, this is why you want to do it this way, and the benefits to them. If I did those two things, I found that they were much more likely to hear what I was saying and then to do those tasks that I was asking of them.
Yeah, the lead by example is so important in that story. It seems to me that if we think about the way to use cultures differently to get the best out of the mix of cultures, the diversity inclusion concept, if you will, it's so important to make sure that is not a difference or a negativeness, as opposed to where is the intersection of thought, where is the intersection of intent in that process. It's not just a numerical experience, it's actually a true leadership experience from cultural backgrounds. And it sounds like you've been exposed to a number of them. In those cases, that was maybe a case where they had a different approach because of what they learned and their how. But in terms of seeing that work in a positive way, I'm sure you've seen that as well. The diversity and inclusion of thought from various cultures or points of view, gender, whatever age, et cetera.
So, yeah. So, when you work in the college setting, you're going to be inclusive because you want to win. I mean, that's it. And I think any corporation would say the same thing. When I work with corporations now, companies now, it's the same thing. Like, if you're really focused on winning, and that means like, increasing your profits, it means, that you want to engage your employees, retain your employees, all those kind of things. And we think of wins in the corporate arena, then it's about how do you create that feeling of togetherness? How do you create that feeling where, look, it doesn't matter what your religious views are. It doesn't matter your political views. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. If you really have the focus on the outcome rather than the people, you're going to get what you want. But if you're focused on, I'm different than you can't get there. And, when I was an athlete and, playing for the Olympics, we had to learn. In fact, one time, there were 13 women on our team. We were living in one house. I want you to imagine that. 13 women living in one house. We had to share the bathrooms, we had to share the kitchen. There was anything that came into that house, like if you had a boyfriend or you had a girlfriend or whatever it was at that time, like it was known. And we had to create a way that we could live together. That when you went to shower, you couldn't take a long shower because somebody else wanted hot water. You had to create a way that you could share the refrigerator and share the living space and share, different people's opinions. And you think about that, you had 13 women from ages as young as 16 to 30, and we had to create a way together to make that happen. That was diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we needed it, or we were going to fight each other on the court, and we knew we had no chance to succeed if we didn't. And so I would say that, the older women at that time, I was one of the younger people, that the women who were around 30, they were so good at talking to us and trying to get us to be inclusive and finding ways together to collaborate in that house. Right. Everything was, you had to do that to make to make it work so that we could move forward on this dream of being Olympians together.
And that team was ultimately successful because they were able to do that.
Well, when I talk about so success is interesting, how we rate success. So we could say success is a gold medal, success is whatever. We played a sport called team handball, Charlie, which is not basketball. A lot of people think because I was a basketball coach, I played basketball in the Olympics. And what I played was a sport called team handball, which is like soccer using the hands or water polo on land. And so it's still not a well-known sport in the United States because of lack of leadership. It's never grown because of lack of leadership. Let me say that one more time. But here's the thing is that we were successful because we were competitive, because we won 2 games, because we were just one goal away from being a medalist, which in an impossible situation because we were playing people who've been playing the sport since they were like 5 or 6. And most of us did not take up the sport until we were like in our late teens or early 20s. And so the success was different. We did have success, just not in the way that other people might have qualified, like you weren't a medalist.
Yeah, well, I think the key then is success. It's a very important point. Success needs to be defined properly, and success has an evolutionary track to it as well. It's not just one point A to one point B, because if that were the case, a lot of times we think of all the ups and downs in our lives and in the journey we're on. It's got to be evolutionary. So I think you're talking about success, and how do you coach that concept that it's success over time?
Right. Well, again, what I did when I became a coach, I really looked at scenarios, and I thought, what? How do we define a win? I think that's what you have to do, is how you define a win. And so just like if you had a new company, you're not going to go out and blow out the doors the first year. You're probably not going to make a profit, right? Probably not for several years. So what do your wins look like? And what I did was say, look, if we want to respect ourselves, which is critical, if you're ever going to be successful, you have to keep the respect of yourself. Once you lose that respect, you're not going to be successful. So what I did is I said, there's 3 things that create a win. Number 1, did we give 100% effort? So no matter what happened on the floor, no matter what happened, like, are we getting beat by 30? Did we, whatever, did we give 100%? Because if you walk off and you feel like you gave your all, and there's no question about it, you're going to feel good about yourself. Number 2, did we never quit? So no matter what happened, right? So let's say your best player got injured. A lot of people would go, oh, game's over. Did we never quit? Were we able to sustain whatever challenge came our way? Did we keep fighting through that challenge? And number 3 was, did we learn something from the experience? And so when I evaluated a win or a loss, it was always on those 3 points. It was never on the scoreboard. And when we evaluated it that way, which kept it within our controllable factors, when we looked at our controllable factors and we really focused on those things, which also kept self-respect and respect of the team, we got better and better and better.
And that is the ultimate goal.
That is the ultimate goal.
So maybe you could share with the audience some of the things you're most proud of as a leader. I know you've given some examples of things you faced and some your definition of success, but maybe what you're most proud of as a leader.
Well, I think that, Charlie, I've interviewed over 200 CEOs in the last 2 years. And I always want to know this question. I always want to know what their answer is. And it's not surprising to me that the majority of people, when I ask this, is the same as mine, which is this: the success of the people that I coached. So what are they doing now? How do they change? How do they evolve? What do they grow into? So what is their, what does their current relationship look like with their partner? What is their current career? What is their happiness level? And so, when I look at that, I look at how did I impact or influence these people, and how did they evolve over the time that I had with them, which is the same thing that, like I said, over probably 80% of the people that I interviewed, they would talk about the success of the people on their teams and the evolution of those people going forward to become COOs, CEOs, whatever, senior vice presidents of companies, and how they evolved and their success. So I think it's true of any leader who really cares about their people and respect their people. It's valued on what you saw those people do and how they evolved over the time that they spent with you.
Yeah, no, I think there's examples after examples of that, how that person then gets credit for success because of their people as well, because no one person can do it all. It's interesting. One of the chapters in the book that I wrote, The Power of Respect, was one on the title of the chapter was "No One Ever Crossed the Finish Line Alone," and I wrote that about the 2013 Chicago Marathon, which I ran in, and now I'm 6'2", 240, and so I'm not the model of a marathoner, but the respect that people who I didn't even know at running stores, running clubs, other people willing to help me train, got me through an incredible amount of effort that I wouldn't have probably been able to do on my own in an attempt to be successful to complete that goal of running in a marathon and finishing it.
Oh, well, first of all, it's an incredible accomplishment. And so kudos to you, man, because, running down the block seems like a long distance to me now. But you're right. I mean, no successful person, I don't care if it's an individual sport or you're an entrepreneur that's your company. I don't care. There's always, always, always a number of individuals who are supporting you, mentoring you, coaching you, being there just to say, look, at the moment when you're in that place of defeat where you feel like I can't take one more step, I can't do this, and they're saying, yes, you can, and here it is, and here's the way to do it. When you have that and you know that somebody has your back, when those moments that you lack the confidence, then somebody else can pick up the slack and to help you forward. And the people who don't succeed, Charlie, are the ones who don't allow that support to come in. It's the people who think, I have to do it by myself, or I'm not, good enough, or I can't claim this as a victory. Well, and then they suffer too much. Why suffer when you could just turn and say to somebody, hey, what do you think about this? How would you have done it? Tell me what you found out about this. When you do it that way, you're going to be so much more successful, so much faster than just trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. All of this idea of supporting others and supporting yourself as a journey, the inclusion of all the people that can help you be successful and help them be successful is the message here. And I think it's a terrific one, especially from someone like yourself who has obtained success at some of the highest levels in certain areas. And I think it's very important.
Well, thank you. And it's still working. I mean, I still think that there's never an ending, is there, Charlie, to the learning about ourselves and the way that we disrespect ourselves and the way that we respect ourselves or disrespect and respect others. There's always another layer of understanding and awareness that we can get to. And, people who are those lifelong learners, those are the people who find and excel in relationships. And relationships that's what business is. Business is all about relationships.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. And I think in fact, I think leadership is about relationships. I know there's results in there as well, but I also find that you are not likely to get to the results you want without the relationships. I think
it's impossible. Right? Yeah, I think it's impossible.
Sure. And as a message to anybody who's trying hard and feels that they would like or need help, just remember what Jim Valvano said. Never, ever, ever give up.
Exactly. I mean, you just don't know. And that's what happens to people, right? They start believing that they can't. And then as soon as they believe that, then that becomes, as soon as you think it becomes a belief, and as soon as you have a belief, it stops any forward progress. But if you just believe that, one more step, then one more, then one more, then one more, you'll find the answer. And that's whether it's in athletics or, again, when I started my business and now I'm a speaker, a motivational speaker, speaking on leadership and do leadership coaching and consulting. What I discovered, Charlie, was, when I first started this new business, age 50, I had a lot of failures. And I just kept saying, well, what can I learn from that? What can I learn from that? What can I learn from that? What did I learn from that? And so it's that next step that allows us to get to where we want to go.
Right. Now, I know you've written one book for sure. I believe it's called Winning Leadership, 7 Secrets for Employee Champions and Sales Superstars.
Well, so that is a book that's been currently written. And I've written another book called Unleash the Winner Within You, Success Game Plan for Business, Leadership, and Life. And then another quote book, and then another book. And then I've been in several chapters of several books. But so the book that I sold the most from was Unleash the Winner Within You, a game plan for leadership, life, and business, I think is the name of it. I can't remember it right now, but Unleash the Winner Within You, Success Game Plan for Business, Leadership, and Life. There you go. And the new one is from all these people that I've interviewed, Charlie, and really trying to tie in all their incredible knowledge. Like, you talk to 200 people and you're like, man, that's just so much information. But just trying to tie that all in a way that people can learn from it. And I want to say it in such a way that maybe it's an epiphany for somebody. So instead of, there's not a lot of new knowledge out there, but there's a different way to say it that may impact somebody in a way that they can hear it. And that's what my aim is. And so that's the one about winning leadership. And then I've been working on for a couple of years. And I'm hoping, that I'm going to be able to tie that all in and tie that up in the next couple of months.
Just the idea of sharing that with people, that experience and the knowledge you gained in your research, very helpful and very much right on with respect to what a leader does.
Coaching an athletic team is not that much different from being, in any of the C-suite or middle management positions, because coaching is about people, and so is being a leader, right? It's about people. When I first started coaching, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm coaching basketball. And so I went and learned all these offenses and all these defenses, and I read all these books. And I started coaching, and I was like, it's not about the basketball. Right. It's about the people. And how do I get these people to have confidence in themselves, to play at a higher level, to work together, to come together in a common goal? Like, how do I get these people to do that? And I realized, I need that other knowledge, and I worked on the other knowledge, but this other piece about people and how you get those people to do the things that maybe they think they can't do, or how you get the people to work instead of working in silos, working together. That was the most important thing in leadership that any leader, I think, at any level can learn how to do.
It's well beyond the technical side of your knowledge. Absolutely. Technical knowledge is sort of the price of admission. The skills you just mentioned are what sets the leaders apart.
Absolutely.
I want to thank Sherry Winn for being with us today, and I especially want to thank you for listening to this episode of The Power of Respect. If you like what you heard today, please consider sharing the podcast and visit our website at expertsinhow.com. A quick reminder, if you'd like to read my book, The Power of Respect in Business, it's available on Amazon. Thanks again for listening, and always remember, respect builds trust, trust builds relationships, and relationships are the key to leadership.
This has been the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. To listen to more episodes and to learn about Charlie's leadership development programs, visit his website, expertsinhow.com.